There's a pattern I see over and over again with runners who feel stuck just below their next breakthrough. They're consistent, they're doing the runs, they know what they should be doing, and yet the results are not there. Not because they're incapable, but because the version of them chasing the goal isn't the version of them who can hold it just yet. So today I want to take you inside a conversation I had with a runner recently because it highlights exactly where this gap shows up and what actually needs to shift. Welcome back and hello if you're new around here. My name is Gillian or Coach G and I'm the host of Your Running Coach with GMacSpurr and owner of GMacSpurr Coaching. I'm a running mindset coach and I help runners of all levels build self-trust under pressure so they can actually execute on the goals that they care about. And in today's episode, we're diving into why you might be stuck just short of your PB and what's actually keeping you there. So I was talking with a runner recently about her training. Let's call her Kate. Kate was doing all the things and still found that she wasn't getting the results she was working for. We talked about her training and yes, there were certainly tweaks that I could make to her runs. And once we touched upon nutrition, which honestly was more I know what I should be doing than an actual fueling strategy, I asked her something really simple. I said, do you actually believe you can run this PB? Kate paused and then she said, I want to, I just don't know if I can. And that right there, that's the work. Because if your belief hasn't caught up with your goal, your behaviour will always drift back to what feels familiar, no matter how good your training is going. So we stayed there for a moment. I asked her why she doesn't believe it. And what came out wasn't overly dramatic. It was completely reasonable. It was familiar. Things like, I've been trying for so long. Maybe this is just where I sit. I'm consistent, but I'm not one of those fast runners. And as she was talking, I could hear it clear as day. She wasn't describing her ability. She was describing her identity. She's been training for a PB with the identity of a runner who nearly gets there. The runner who falls just short. The runner who finishes and says, well, maybe next time. And if you've worn that identity for long enough, it becomes so easy, so comfortable, so familiar. So after we had chatted for a bit, I said to her that she's still training like the runner she was 5 years ago, not the runner who runs a PB now. And that, her face, I could tell instantly that it landed because most runners never get told. It's not that you don't want it enough, it's that your identity hasn't caught up with your ambition. And until it does, you will keep recreating the same outcome, just in slightly different ways. Then we went a little bit deeper into something I see all the time. The comfort of being nearly there, because being close to a PB is a very safe place to be. You can say, I'm basically there. On a better day, it would have happened. If life wasn't so busy, I'd have nailed it. Next time. And the dream stays alive without you ever fully stepping into it. Because going all in, that's where it gets uncomfortable. Because what if you do everything right and it still doesn't happen? But also, this is the bit most people don't admit. What if it does? What if you PB and now that becomes your standard? What if you expect more from yourself? What if others expect more from you? So I asked Kate what actually changes if she achieves this. And I was met with silence. Not because she didn't want it, but because she hadn't let herself fully go there. Then we looked at how she was training. Every session was being filtered through one question. Is this run, is this effort getting me closer to my PB? And that just creates pressure. Every run becomes a test. Every missed split, a panic. Feeling tired, something's wrong. One off week, spiralling. So I said to her, you're chasing a number instead of building the runner who runs that number. And that's a completely different approach, because the runners who PB constantly, they're not the most motivated. They're not the most hyped. They're the ones who trust what they're building, even when their brain is screaming for reassurance. They treat sessions as evidence, not tests. I then brought the conversation into race day. I asked her to walk me through the moment it starts to feel hard during her half marathon. And she knew immediately. For Kate, it was somewhere between halfway and about 16k. She said, that's where I start thinking, here we go again. And that sentence, that's rehearsed. Because under pressure, your brain doesn't create new thoughts. It defaults to the ones it knows best, the most familiar, the easy to return to thought. So if your script is, this always happens, I can't hold this is where it all begins to fall apart, your body knows. Not because you're incapable, but because your brain is trying to protect you. This is the mindset work, not affirmations, not hype, but training your response to discomfort before race day. At one point, Kate said, I just don't think I'm one of those runners. And I said, based on what? Because belief isn't built on confidence, it's built on evidence. And most runners are collecting evidence for why they can't PB, instead of deliberately collecting evidence for why they can. Your brain will argue your limitations unless you train it to argue for your potential. That's not positive thinking, it's strategic thinking. And then we got to the point where most people avoid the cost. The cost of 5 years of trying. The cost of 5 years of almost. The cost of 5 years of hope, reset, disappointment. And I said to her, at some point, this stops being about whether it's possible and becomes about how long you're willing to stay here. Yep. Okay, so if you're new around here, I always offer some journal prompts so you can dive a little bit deeper into the topic that we are talking about. So grab yourself some pen and paper or use the notes app on your phone. I've got 6 questions for you today, so a little more than normal. Ready? What identity am I currently running from? So for this question, write out all the ways that you're operating from an old system. Question 2. Is that identity capable of holding the goal I say I want? Question 3. Am I afraid of failing or of what success would require from me next? It's a big one. Next question. Am I treating my training like a test or like a process of becoming? Question 5. What thoughts do I default to when things get hard in a race? And number 6. If nothing changes, where will I be with this goal in a year? So take your time with those prompts. Be honest, judgment-free. You're becoming consciously aware of what is running in the background. And I'll share this as well, because this isn't something I just see in other runners. I've been there too. There was a period where I just kept landing short of the race day results I knew that I was capable of. I was training consistently, doing the thing. But when it came to the moments that actually mattered, when it started to feel hard, when the pressure kicked in, my brain would default to the same thoughts. Here we go. This is where it all unravels. And I didn't question it at the time. I just thought that that was a normal part of racing. But looking back, I can see exactly what was happening. I was still operating from an identity of a runner who gets close, who fades, who doesn't quite hold it together when it counts. And that shift didn't come from changing my training. In fact, nothing in my training changed. It came from changing how I responded in those moments. From catching those thoughts earlier, from deliberately building evidence and training that I could hold on to, from deciding ahead of time who I was going to be when things got uncomfortable. Not perfectly, but consistently enough that it stopped feeling like a surprise on race day. And that is the work. It's not about becoming a completely different runner overnight. It's about no longer reinforcing the version of you that's kept you stuck. So if you've been listening to this thinking, yep, that is me, then take this as your nudge. You probably don't need a new training plan or a new running goal. You just need to shift the way you're seeing yourself inside the process and how you're showing up in the moments that actually matter. This is exactly the work that we do inside the Runner Identity Project, or lovingly called TRIP. It's a structured mental performance system designed to help you build self-trust under pressure, regulate your response in key moments, and actually become the runner who can execute when it counts. If you're ready to explore that, there's a link in the show notes where you can book a free consultation call with me. We'll look at where you're at, what's actually keeping you stuck, and what needs to shift to move you forward. And if this episode landed for you, send me a message on Instagram, GMacSpurr Coaching, and let me know what hit. Thanks for listening. Happy running. See you next week. Bye for now.